shows you just how out of touch you are.
And it's the difference between having 222 murders a year in this city and getting it down to 140, which it now is. Those numbers are down because we've got coppers on the street.
Bob Stewart.
Well, I really want business to take off, and obviously a heck of a lot of the people here support that. We've got a real problem in this country because practically half the people in employment are paid for one way or other by the government. Now that means the other half have to pay them. That is extremely difficult. Now how the heck do we get out of the situation so that youth unemployment goes down? And the only way we can do that is to try and create. Firstly, I agree with Joe on the subject of trying to get the economy going again. All of us would agree with that. But we've somehow got to get more youngsters, young people, into employment. And I actually think this budget is trying its very best to help small businesses. Some of you might not think that, but it is. It is trying to actually stimulate young business, young in terms of age of the people doing it, but also new business.
How does it help new businesses?
Well, the fact of the matter is, some of the taxes have been reduced on start-ups. That's true.
Okay, gentleman there. Is that a lot of people saying? Is that it pathetic?
Well, have you? What would you suggest that we do? What would you? No, I'm telling you, it is extremely difficult. We don't have any money. Well, I disagree with.
This lady's got a fledgling business down here. What would you do?
Young Entrepreneur Society, we do training courses to help young people start businesses. And I had a meeting with John Bercow, Speaker of the House of Commons, only yesterday, and he is really trying to get me in front of Vince Cable to get some government funding for what I'm doing. 20% of the people that go through my programme set up a business and get off job seekers allowance. The government needs to get behind me.
Gentleman in the grey jacket with the piping. Hello
I don't really mean to go back on what we were talking about, but how can the government really be justified in making any sort of cuts when we're spending, you know, £1 million on a single missile in Libya?
I mean, there's this. I mean, I suppose it is related. It's a question of can we really afford this action at the moment, and that isn't unrelated to the budget. Yeah, George Galloway.
I mean, Bob was undoubtedly a brave and good soldier, but he's not much of an economist, as has become clear in the last couple of minutes. He asks you to think that it's bad that half of the people, he says, it's not actually half, are working for the public sector. Where do you think the public sector workers spend their wages, Bob? They spend it on the goods and services produced by the people in the private sector. If you make, as you have, hundreds of thousands of public sector workers unemployed, they no longer have any wages to spend on the products and the services of the private sector workers. That's why, and Brian was worried about inflation, the real danger is stagflation. That is to say, rising inflation and absolute stagnation in the economy. That's the way to a double dip and really mass unemployment in this country. 1 million young people in Britain without work, without education, and how can they with triple tuition fees, and without any kind of training. That's an explosion. That's an explosion waiting to happen. And then we'll blame the young people for being angry.
It's worth pointing out it was a Labour Chief Secretary to the Treasury that said all the money had run out. Just some more tweets. Declan Waters in Wiltshire. What are the government going to do to encourage entrepreneurs? While doubling the allowance to £10 million was a great start. Elliot Wengler says, this crowd, that's you, needs to get over tuition fees. Half of them probably don't even know what course or uni they want to go to. Nick, Elliot Wengler in High Wycombe, you have been booed, just for the record there. Nick Pullinger in Hertfordshire. Joe Swinson is being given a right kicking on YVQT. Unfair, really. Sure, she only voted for tuition fees because she's Vince Cable's parliamentary private secretary, which, of course, you are.
I am Vince's PPS, but we managed to improve the policy and having done so... No, we did. Look, I'm sorry.
What was it going to be then?
Well, read the Brown report. It was going to be no limit on fees whatsoever, and that's exactly what Labour and the Conservatives cooked up when they put the Brown report together under Peter Mandelson. Read his book and you'll see exactly what would have happened, either with a Labour government or with a Conservative government.
Let's bring another question. We've got a few minutes left, Joshua, because it relates to this very discussion. So let's bring in our final question, which is Cameron Harvey-Piper. So many hands up. Cameron Harvey-Piper.
With Essex University becoming yet another institution to announce top-rate tuition fees, is 9,000 really the exception?
So, yeah, I mean, Oxford University, Cambridge University, Exeter, Imperial College, Essex University, Manchester, University of Surrey and Durham have all announced fees of £9,000, the absolute upper ceiling. Is it the exception?
Well,
is that the exception?
They haven't been able to announce them. They might say they want to charge that, but whether or not they get allowed to charge that depends on their policies on access and making sure...
Did you predict that would happen? That many would want to check out?
I think certainly... No, they will be. The Director of Fair Access will be looking at these institutions on an annual basis.
Only two people working with him.
Who'll be looking...
He can't possibly do the job.
Well, I think he can do the job, and he's got the powers in order to do it. But I think it's also important to recognise that people will only pay back once they're earning more than £21,000, which is an improvement on Labour's policy, because that means that every graduate will pay back less per month. So somebody on a salary of £25,000, under the new plans, will pay £30 a month. Okay. Under Labour's legacy system, we're paying £75 a month.
All right, let's go to the audience.
Why don't your constituents have to pay it then?
Why should they have to pay it?
Why should they have to pay it?
Because Liberal Democrats in government in Scotland managed to convince Labour to get rid of tuition fees.
That makes it worse.
But in this situation, we have both Labour and the Conservatives.
You tripled their tuition fees. Yes. And you were successful, you say, in persuading the Scottish Parliament not to have any tuition fees at all.
And spend the money in a different way.
Well, I mean, the hypocrisy of this is quite staggering. And the truth is that you voted for it. Look, I'll tell you something, I'm going to be blunt. A member of Parliament who votes in favour of something that they tell you they don't believe in is either a careerist or a coward.
You better respond to that. We've got to respond to that.
Alternatively, recognises that when the British people gave a result that didn't give one party an overall majority in the House of Commons, that two parties had to come together to govern, and that does mean compromise.
Okay.
That does mean compromise.
Okay, Brian Shule, did you want to say something there?
I thought when I came into this room that this end of the table had the dinosaurs. Quite clearly, you two are prepared to go over and over and over the same stale old ground. Well, I'm going to go even further back. I'm going back to the days of when I was a student. Now, it's important, because when I was a student, our local authorities paid our university fees, and they gave us a grant, which did not have to be repaid. That, in my view, was a perfect system. Ever since then, governments have eroded that perfection until we are at the point where the present government produces a scheme and they can't even do the propaganda for
Brian, the government at the moment can't afford that, can they? They can't afford to do what they did for you when you were a student.
It's the same as inflation. They've just let it rise and rise and rise.
We only have just under 3 minutes left, so we're going to collate loads of points. Look how eager you are. Yes, all right, gentleman there in the jacket. Yep, quick points.
My question is, with the government policy of bringing people into new businesses, making them entrepreneurs, if we do not teach them to become who they want to become later on, with your fees going up to £9,000, how are we going to be doing that in the future?
What we're going to do is we're taking points rather than questions. Yes, lady there, hi.
His tweet earlier said that we should get over the university fees, but for us, it's the older generation who's had all these opportunities, coming around saying, you know, we've run out of money now, you can't have that.
All right, people back there, yes, sir, yeah, blue shirt, go ahead.
The only way that the universities aren't going to charge £9,000 is if the Lib Dems actually stand up to the universities, and as we've seen, they're not very good at doing that.
Okay, let's go right over there to the gentleman in that grey top over there. Yeah, hi, sir.
I would like to ask Bob Stewart and Joe Swinson whether they think the coalition should continue with its programme of cuts if it costs them the next election.
OK, do you know what, we're just going to keep taking points if that's OK. Yep, up there, yes, gentleman there, hi.
Well, whether or not you agree with tuition fees, the UK has the second most reputable universities in the world, and it looks like in the next 5 years total funding is going to decrease. Why are we taking such a risk with our universities? Surely we should, as a country, we spend one of the smallest proportions of GDP on higher education. We should be doing more. OK,
the two gentlemen there, I'll come to you in the check shirt first of all. Yep, hi.
Nick Clegg, during the election, he signed a pledge that he would scrap tuition fees. Now that he's in power in a coalition with Conservative, it seems that he's sold out to the Conservatives.
Okay, and the gentleman next to you, yeah.
Just 2 quick points. George's red herrings about the Scottish issue. Scotland have far less unis, there's more money to spread around. Secondly, as an undergraduate at the University of Manchester, one of those 9,000 institutions, I want to hear clear things from the government about what exactly they're going to make universities do to actually justify charging that. Okay. All I've heard is rubbish. I want to hear clear procedures.
Okay, a very short time, and I'm sorry that the man branded the young William Hague. I'm sorry, I haven't got time to come back to you. Joe, just a final comment from you very quickly.
Well, in answer to that question, we'll be encouraging universities to improve the quality, because a lot of students are getting experience which is nothing like what Brian had all those years ago in terms of the number of hours of teaching and so on.
That is it. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. We could roll on. That's it for Young Voters Question Time. Thank you to our panel, and thank you to the audience here in London. Wow, that was rowdy. Thank you very much, and good night.